As bad as it was in Israel and Judah, God still sent prophets to both nations. Up in Israel, Ben-Hadad, king of Aram, wrote some angry messages at Ahab, the king of Israel, saying he'd take whatever he wanted from them. Ahab's final message back was, "All we see is text. Come yourself and see if we give you anything." A prophet said beforehand what would happen. Ben-Hadad, who had a cool name, yes, but was doomed for defeat. Ahab followed the prophet's specific advice, and Ben-Hadad himself barely escaped with his life. Then the prophet told Ahab that Ben-Hadad would try again before the end of the year. Again, Ahab followed the prophet's advice, and Israel had Ben-Hadad pinned again. Ben-Hadad negotiated peace, knowing kings in Israel and Judah tended to be merciful. There was a group called the Sons of the Prophets. One of its members prophesied against Ahab because he had not destroyed Ben-Hadad. Ahab was sullen. Then his wife, Jezebel, lied and had a man killed so Ahab could use the land the man had owned. Elijah told Ahab his kingdom would be removed from him. Ahab mourned again. When God saw how sorry Ahab was, he passed the judgment down one generation. Jehoshaphat was Asa's son and became king in Judah. He married a relative of Ahab's, and the two kings of Israel and Judah became friends. Jehoshaphat came up to see Ahab. They discussed making war on the region of Ramoth-Gilead. Jehoshaphat suggested asking a prophet. Ahab had 400 prophets that all said the war would go well. Jehoshaphat asked if there was a prophet of God available. Ahab knew of one, but the prophet always had bad news. Micaiah, the prophet, said, "God sees Israel like a flock of sheep, lost with no shepherd." He also said Ahab would die. Micaiah was treated badly. Ahab was killed by a random arrow that could have been from anywhere. He was disguised as a normal soldier, so as to not draw attention as king. Jehoshaphat made it back from Israel okay. He was a pretty good king. He trusted God and encouraged the leaders and judges to deal fairly. Then a contingent of Moabites, Arameans, and Mennonites passed outside Jerusalem ready to attack. Jehoshaphat prayed, "You can beat any nation, Lord. You created them. These coming against us are the very nations you told us to wipe out that we didn't, and this is how they repay. You are our only hope." The prophet Jezebel said, "God will defeat our enemies without us lifting a sword." He says, "Go out tomorrow and see his power." They all rejoiced. The next morning they went over the hills and found the armies had fought against themselves. They were all dead. It took 3 days to get all the stuff they left.